Real estate investors out there are constantly getting taken advantage of by dirty contractor tricks. And this one that we call the hostage is one of the hardest ones to see coming. In my 15 years of doing this, I found some ways to break free of the hostage and also prevent myself from ever getting in it. And that's what we're gonna go through in this video. I'm gonna go through what the hostage is, give you some examples, show you how to get out of it if you've been caught, and also how to prevent it totally. So the hostage really applies to the contractors who have specialty licenses, like an electrician, a plumber, an HVAC tech, or a general contractor. The way they hold you hostage is they give you a lower bid so they win the job. Once they've won the job, they go pull the permit. And a lot of people don't understand that once a permit is pulled, it's really hard to get a contractor off of the permit. You usually have to go through a lot of paperwork and have them actually agree to be let off of the permit. This is to protect them, but obviously some bad actors use this against you. You need electrical done on one of your projects, so you call an electrician in and he comes and gives you a $14,000 bid to rewire the whole house. And you're like, that's ridiculous, I'm gonna call somebody else. You call the next guy and he says, oh, it's actually only gonna be $3,000. We're just gonna replace the panel. And then you're like, okay, so how do you not have to do all of the other stuff that the $14,000 contractor said you needed to do? And the dirty contractor says, oh, well, that guy's crazy. You don't have to do any of that extra work. We're just gonna do the panel. So of course you award him the job, and then he does the panel, he calls in the inspection because he got permits, and the inspector comes in and says, well, hey, you have to rewire this whole house. And then what does the dirty contractor say? Oh, well, you know, the inspector said we gotta do it, so we gotta do it. And then he gives you a bid to do that work. Turns out it's $14,000. So now you had to pay the $14,000 plus the $3,000. But the thing is, at this point, you're trapped. You're already in the hole of the $3,000. You can't go back in time. He's got a permit, so it's hard to go replace him with a different contractor. And even if you did, it would still cost a lot more money. Now, I've certainly been caught by this one quite a few times in my over a decade of doing this. Here are some other ways that it shows up. A plumber comes in to do some sewer line repairs, but they know as soon as they call in the inspection that the inspector is going to make them do a sewer scope, and then they're probably going to have to replace the sewer line all the way to the road, a $15,000 job. Or a general contractor comes in, bids the whole project, and they can see that the framing in the house is older framing and it's not going to meet new code requirements. And they also know that we're going to be demoing all the drywall, which now exposes all of that framing to new code requirements. So now they're going to have to reframe the whole house. So why does this work? Well, I mean, we're all investors. When you see that $3,000 bid versus the $14,000 bid, which one you picking? And here's the thing, we've all been trained that contractors are out trying to screw you. So the guy who gives the $14,000 bid, you're naturally gonna think, that guy's trying to screw me. He's telling me I have to do all this work that I don't have to do. But this nice guy over here, he showed me the real way where I only have to do $3,000 worth of work. So how are you gonna know which one's right, the 3 or the 14? Well, we're gonna get to that in a second when we talk about how to prevent this from ever happening. But first, let's talk about what you do if you're caught right in the middle of being held hostage. Now, we alluded to this earlier. It is really difficult to get one of these licensed contractors off of your permit. Now, it varies from municipality to municipality, but in my experience, you have to go through some legal paperwork to actually get them to pull their permit off of your project. And the big thing here is it requires their compliance. They need to sign the paperwork and turn it into the city. We generally don't recommend changing your horse midstream on these guys for a bunch of reasons that we don't really have time to get into in this video. But to sum it up, it always ends up costing a lot more money. But there are certain instances where it is in your best interest to change horse midstream. The main one being that when you know without a shadow of a doubt that it is a dirty contractor that you're dealing with, an unethical person. But the problem is that a lot of times you don't know. Are they being unethical? Or are they just dumb? Let's take the $3,000 bid from that electrician. Maybe they seriously thought that they were going to be able to just put in a panel, the city would come in and say it was good to go because maybe that happened on a project that they had just done. It's truly a hard thing to judge. And so the only thing I can tell you is that if you notice a pattern of these mistakes, then maybe it is time to break ties with them. Even if it's not them being a dirty contractor, if they're making that many mistakes, maybe you need to part ways. And one other thing to consider is how much money have you spent with them already? If it truly is a situation where they've only done $3,000 worth of work and that's all you've paid them, and there's another $15,000 to do, well, now you're in a lot better position to break ties with them. Because the next contractor that comes in with that $15,000 of work left to do, they can still create job efficiencies and really make the project their own. Whereas if it was the opposite and there was only $3,000 worth of work left for them to do, well, they're going to have to figure out what the electrician did before them, and it's going to cost a lot of money before they can even do the $3,000 worth of work. Undoubtedly, if you get caught in the middle, you're in a bad situation one way or the other. So let's talk about how you prevent yourself from getting in the situation at all. There's 4 different ways to do this. The conventional way to do it is to get bids from 3 different contractors for the same job. Then you can compare them together and you can decide if the scopes of work match and if the prices match, because there is a lot of subjectivity between contractors. But there are some serious downsides to doing this, and I actually don't recommend doing the 3 bids in most cases. And here's why. For every time you get 3 bids, you are wasting 2 of the 3 contractors' time. And even though you may make a strong argument that, well, that's the way business is for contractors, that they need to give better bids and win your business, and they shouldn't get upset about those things. But that's not the reality. They're going to look at you as a time waster if you call them and you don't end up awarding them the job. They're going to think that you don't know what you're doing. Doing 3 bids, though, is the fastest way to get the answers that you need. So next, you could just learn each one of the trades, and that way you would know exactly what things should cost and what the scope of work would be. It's just going to take about a decade. Right, that's probably not going to work for your next house flip. However, that is the ultimate goal. But to gain that knowledge, you have to see how it's done the right way. So if it's not 3 bids, what is it? Well, you could get a home inspection company to come in and look at the work that needs to be done. But here's the problem that most people don't realize. Home inspection companies are looking for safety and liability issues as well as problems with the house that are going to affect the homeowner that's buying the house. Codes enforcement, the city inspectors, are looking at code infractions based upon the codes that municipality has adopted, because the different municipalities use different codes. Here's an example. A home inspector might come in and say, you need GFCI outlets above the countertop in the kitchen, which is true. That is also a code requirement. Well, codes enforcement might come in and say, well, that's a small appliance branch chain, and that requires 12 gauge wires to be run straight from the panel. But home inspectors don't look for that stuff. So in some cases, a home inspector might work, but in some cases, it might be a big miss. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't get home inspections done. I'm just saying that that is not going to prevent you from being held hostage. Now, finally, this is the method that I recommend you use if you haven't learned the trades yourself yet, which works like this. Taking the electrical as an example, you would find an electrician that would write you a scope of work and tell you how much it would cost to do the work, but you're not going to let them do the work. You're simply going to work out an arrangement with them where you'll pay them $200-$300 to go look at your project and tell you what the scope should be and how much it should cost. And you may even pay them a little bit extra to look at the bids that you receive from other people. But it's very important that this agreement means that you'll never hire them to do the work. That way they're never biased in the scope that they're writing for you. Now, with that type of relationship, you're also going to gain your experience fast. So you actually start to understand pretty quickly how to write your own scopes. Now, that's how you're going to prevent that specific dirty contractor trick, the hostage. But there are other dirty contractor tricks out there, and here's what you should be doing on an everyday basis to make sure you avoid all of them. Number 1 is you should have a depth chart of the contractors that you work with and always be trying to upgrade for better ones. That means you're always recruiting. You need to treat your contractor recruiting just like a sales pipeline. You're always putting new leads into the funnel and you're always working them down to becoming a contractor that works with you. You need to personally take ownership of the scopes of work. Don't trust somebody else to write them for you. You need to understand what needs to be on the scope of work from start to finish on a project. You're the leader of the project, and leaders cast visions. And the scope of work is your vision. You need to make sure you have cash reserves. Cash reserves allow you to play without having your back against the wall. You see, when you run out of cash, you're going to start making all your decisions just based upon getting cash back in your pocket, instead of making the decision that is best for that project and the outcome. Number 4, never pay ahead. Now, that doesn't mean to make it really hard on the contractors to get paid. You actually, as soon as they get done with a job, you want to pay them as quickly as you possibly can. And also, to make it easier on them, we always set pre-agreed upon pay schedules. When they get this amount of work done, they get a check. When they get this amount done, they get a check. And those can be really small if you want them to be. That way they're always getting their money that they need to run their business, just never ahead of doing the work. And finally, most importantly, having a shift in your mindset. To find the best contractors and truly be able to take your foot off of the gas and let the business start to run itself, you need to work off of a foundation of strong relationship capital with these guys. And I know that talking about dirty contractor tricks is a lot of fun, but the truth is you can't go into the relationship with them thinking they're trying to be dirty. Try to give them the benefit of the doubt. Which leads me to my next question is, does my contractor suck? Well, I made a whole video about it. Check it out.